Good morning. It is 10:30 a.m. roughly. It is Sunday morning, and that means it is time for Sunday Club, a weekly live stream where every week we look at building a Ruby on Rails app together. And the app that we're building is where people can sign up for a user account. They can give the app their YouTube channel ID. The app will go and get all of the videos from that channel and then build a little page, a little web page, a website for all of those videos. And we kind of use these to look at different aspects of Ruby on Rails and that kind of ecosystem and just see what interests us. So welcome if this is your first time watching. And if it's not, welcome back. This week, couple things. I haven't got a huge amount of follow-up, but the first thing is first thing is a medical emergency. I cut myself shaving this morning. So if you notice, I'm trying to look at where the cameras are. If you notice, blood running down my face or anything like that, pop that in the chat because it feels important, and also that is why. So that'll be a fun, exciting thing that happens to me this week. Another thing is that I know I had said I was off work this week, which I was, and that I might get a chance to do a homework edition. That did not happen. We've just for other reasons. I'm actually trying to move house at the moment, and that took up a bunch of other time and energy that I would otherwise use. Let's just jump straight in. What are we doing this week? Okay, so with even less prep than usual, which you would think would be hard to match. What I thought we could look at is some Stimulus.js stuff. And the reason for that is we have looked at, in the past few weeks, Turbo frames, Turbo streams, and all of that ecosystem. And all of that has actually been really great. I think Turbo streams was the hardest to get a hold of. But we got that working and it was great. My understanding of where those kind of building blocks fit together for our app is that Turbo Frames is for those situations where we just want to turn something like from a CRUD interface into something a bit more reactive, whatever you want to kind of call that behavior. Then Turbo Streams lets us do the same thing, but for more complex behavior where disassociated things are happening on the screen. And my understanding then is that Stimulus is kind of like for everything else, for stuff that we want to do that doesn't fit neatly into those behaviors or those characteristics, and we want to sprinkle in a little bit of something that's just unique to us. We want, when someone clicks this, we need these other things to happen, and there's no neat wrapper for those things. And it's something that I've been really interested in. We've touched on, I think, very briefly in a couple of streams, but haven't really delved into. And let's just jump straight in to show that. So I'm going to switch over to the coding view. So what do I mean by we've touched on it? So this is the default stimulus controller that I found in our app, and I'm guessing this just comes from our original install, where you, I don't think we installed Stimulus, or did we? Did that come free with Rails? So let's see is that in our package.json? Another quick bit of follow-up just before I know we're diving straight in is that I have, because I've been off this week, I have not looked at any code or written any code or thought particularly about any code. And I haven't really looked at JavaScript in a little while either. So this is all going to be a bit rusty. So let's just dive in together, which is exciting. So we've got active storage. So it's not in there. Okay, so let's check our gem file. Again, I'm not really a Stimulus. Okay, so Stimulus Rails is there, and we've obviously added that a couple months ago. Okay, so install Stimulus Rails. And when we did that, what else did we do? So install Stimulus Rails. This is all the stuff that came with the default installation script. So we must have been doing Stimulus stuff. And that was pretty recent because it was after. Oh, did we have to put that in as part of the Turbo Rails work? So that's from 2 months ago. Are these in the same? Oh, I see. These in the same commit, but that doesn't mean much on this repo because everything's. I don't really keep them particularly neat. Okay. So if you're wondering what that is, by the way, that view, I just have a little. I can't remember which plugin it is for VS Code, but one that just will show you your blame and other things in the file editor. So there's loads of plugins that do things like that, and I think it does it on hover as well. So you can usually see, yep, you can see which commit that came from. So if you don't use VS Code, there'll probably be a likely one for your editor if that's something that you're interested in having. Okay, so we've got Stimulus Rails as the gem that we've got going. Okay, so let's this up and let's go and look at Stimulus.js handbook, I think is the official docs. Okay, so let's bump the font size up in this. So I'm just going to go and look. Actually, I am interested. Have we done... let's go. Just jumping onto the other screen just really quickly. Just to go and check on search Stimulus. So just looking to see if there's a stream in here. No, nothing specific to do with Stimulus. Okay, so I'm just checking my memory isn't failing me because it does most of the time. So great. Let's see if I can get back to. Sorry, I'm just on the other screen just for a second before we dive into these. YouTube make it really hard to get back to the kind of stream that you're actually doing at that moment. Then they give you oh well, okay, we'll figure it's okay. Okay, so I don't know, I don't want to go too deep into these docs. So Stimulus is a JavaScript framework with modest ambitions. Stimulus is, well, let's kind of go through this. I called this video something Stimulus.js. I'm just paranoid that I'm bleeding all over the place. Stimulus is designed to enhance static or server-rendered HTML. So ours would be, hopefully we're going to do something fancy with server-rendered HTML. The HTML you already have by connecting JavaScript objects to elements on the page using simple annotations. These JavaScript objects are called controllers, and Stimulus continuously monitors the page, waiting for HTML data controller attributes to appear. For each attribute, Stimulus looks at the attribute's value to find a corresponding controller class, creates a new instance of that class, and connects it to the element. Okay, so it's handling, tying everything together. Okay, I have looked at this before, but I haven't really delved in. So today we're going to hopefully get to this building something real part. I'm excited by that part. Okay, so for each attribute, Stimulus looks at the attribute's values. This data controller finds a corresponding controller class, fine, creates a new instance of that class, and connects it to the element. Okay, so my memory is there's some sort of API that you have like a... Okay, yeah, let's just keep going. You can think of it this way. Just like the class attribute is a bridge connecting HTML to CSS, Stimulus's data controller attribute is a bridge connecting HTML to JavaScript. Okay, I like that way of thinking about it. Aside from controllers, there are the three other major Stimulus concepts are actions, which connect controller methods to DOM using data action attributes, to DOM events, sorry, using data action attributes. So that is presumably click and hover, blur, all of that kind of stuff. Targets, which locate elements of significance within a controller, and values, which read, write, and observe data. Which read, write, and observe data attributes on the controller's element. Okay. I mentioned recently that when you're using something new, having a mental model of how it works is, I find, incredibly helpful. So I got pretty stuck on the TurboStream stuff until we had that mental model of how it works. Going through the action cable stuff really helped me with that. This Stimulus stuff, like this, like I said, I've looked at it before, but this giving me a mental model of how this works, I find really helpful. Like it's, I like this, like you can think of it this way, like you can imagine, you already have you already have a mental model for something. You can kind of transpose it to think of it like this. Like I find stuff like that really helpful, rather than when they just like technical documentation just dives in with I don't know, just straight API docs, or just like, hey, here's the bloop bloop that connects to the dingle thing. And you're like, I don't know what any of those are. And I don't know how to picture them in my mind. I actually don't care that I don't know what they are. That's fine. It's that I don't have a picture of like where they relate to each other, what, like, I don't know what kind of shape they are. I'm not describing that very well. But I find that that's really what I'm trying to do when I'm looking through technical documentation is work out how my brain is going to think about these things. I don't know if that's how anyone else does that. I don't know if that's a useful thing to do. But I'd be interested to hear how others kind of imagine those things. I can't remember where I read this, but there was something about like, I think it was an interview question, and someone was asking like, they were trying to find I don't know if it's a good interview question, but they were trying to find a candidate's like the way that they visualize data or imagine data, and I think they asked a question like I'm butchering this, but it was something like, in your mind, where is November, or something like that. And like, you probably work with date time all the time. You probably have a mental model of what that looks like and how you think about those things. And I kind of think about that like whenever I think of like Rails, for example, I have a picture of MVC and all those things that I guess no one else imagines it the way I do, because it's my brain. So I'd be interested to hear what how other people do that. Anyway, Stimulus's use of data attributes helps separate content from behavior in the same way CSS separates content from presentation. Okay, so yet more, think of it like this kind of documentation. Further, Stimulus's conventions naturally encourage you to group related code by name, which is the Rails way. Like I've often described Rails as basically just one giant naming convention, which is hugely reductive. In turn, Stimulus helps you build small, reusable controllers, giving you just enough structure to keep your code from devolving into JavaScript soup. So I'm guessing that this, oops, that's my loopback thing coming off. I'm guessing that this small, reusable controllers preventing JavaScript soup is very much helped if you are presumably leaning into turbo frames and turbo streams as well, because you don't have all of the JavaScript behavior that you're having to maintain to, do loads of DOM stuff just to make reactive behavior happen or any of that. So I'm guessing if you're using those three things, Stimulus, turbo frames, and turbo streams together, you're actually not writing a lot of JavaScript yourself, presumably, because that must cover a lot of behavior in an app, especially if you design to those things. This handbook will guide you through Stimulus's core concepts by demonstrating how to write several fully functional controllers. Each chapter builds on the one before it. Print a greeted address to we might skip some of the simple examples. I think what we want to do is put something in the Sunday Club app. So let's see. Copy text from a field to the system clipboard when a button is clicked. Well, that one actually might be pretty handy to get like the URL of the YouTube video that you're working on or something like that. Actually, that one does sound pretty handy. Navigate through a slideshow. Fetch HTML from the server into an element on the page automatically. So that's a good example of something that you might then not want to do in Stimulus, obviously, unless it's a custom thing but that you're trying to accomplish, but that might be better taken care of by turbo frames or turbo streams if you're using those technologies. Set up Stimulus in your own application. Okay, cool. Once you've completed the exercises here, you may find the reference documentation. So let's jump over here. So just going to bump the font size up on that as well. Okay, so I was thinking we could do something even simpler. Can we just do like a show hide thing for those notifications we built? Let's go to the next section. The best way to learn how Stimulus works is to build a simple controller. This chapter will show you how prerequisites. Okay, we can let's be bold and kind of skip this stuff. This Stimulus starter project. It's super helpful that they give you that. I've heard of Glitch, but I've never really worked with it. What does this look like? So this is, I think Glitch is, my understanding is it like a bit like CodePen where you can build stuff in the browser? Collaborate live. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, yeah, it's like looks like this project is no longer a static site and will go to sleep after it's idle for 5 minutes. Okay. So this is something like, oh, what's the other one I've used? Cloud9, I think, was one. And another one was just basically like an IDE in your browser. So I'm assuming I can actually go and work on these here. Yeah. So Cloud9 was one. And I can't remember the name of the other one. And then now that GitHub has these kind of live browser sessions that you can share across VS Code, I think GitHub's ones are code spaces, workspaces, something like that. Oh, good morning. Gitpod, oh no, I haven't heard of Gitpod. What's Gitpod? This is exciting. Like we're learning on these dev environments for the cloud. Oh, that's good. Okay, there's another one there. So what was, is Cloud9 the one I'm thinking of? Cloud9 IDE? Oh, I think the one, yeah, Cloud9 is one. Oh, that's an AWS service now. And there was another one. Good morning. So Gitpod. That's okay, cool. So, and then I like that idea that it said on glitches, like you can just invite people straight in. That's pretty cool. So they give you the, so let's pull these up next to each other. They give you the docs and they say, hey, you need this project, but also they give you a button where you're like, well, hey, here you go. You can just run it. So preview your app, show in a new window, show next to the code. Show next to the code. Oh, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Okay. Can I just close that? So, and then how do we... Oh, whoa, whoa. What is happening? That's really cool. A colored blob that chases your cursor around. Okay, I'm not 100% sure. Do we just do command? Oh, glitch auto saves. Okay. Oh, there we go. It works. Okay, amazing. So it all starts with HTML. Let's begin with a simple exercise using a text field and a button. When you click the button, we'll display the value of the text field in the console. Okay, yeah, we go. Get there. Every stimulus project with HTML. So reload the page. Great. Okay. I'm kind of potentially going to skip some of this getting started stuff. I just really want to remember what you need to do. So at its core, Stimulus's purpose is to automatically connect DOM elements to JavaScript objects. Those objects are named controllers. Yep, done that one. Let's construct our first controller by extending the framework's built-in controller class. Create a new file named hello controller in the source controllers. So I think that's the one that we get by default in our Rails app. Is that what we had? Hello controller. Yep. So we had, this is the one that you get out of the box. Identifiers link controllers with the DOM. Next, we need to tell Stimulus how this controller should be connected to our HTML. We do this by placing an identifier in the data controller attribute on our div. And a thought just occurred to me, which is not necessarily Stimulus related, but it's interesting that this idea of adding everything to the HTML element goes then hand in hand with what Tailwind is doing of adding everything as utility classes to the CSS. So I'm just jumping a million miles ahead to a world where you're using both Stimulus and Tailwind. And if you're looking at like a partial that maybe contains kind of a fairly medium complexity but cool looking thing in your application, you could have a pretty sizable amount of data attributes and then Tailwind classes. So your HTML suddenly becomes not hard to read, but you could maybe like do something. I think I would want to do something with the formatting of that HTML to kind of give my eyes something to grab onto, because I'm so familiar with parsing, even ERB, like how that appears in my editor. If I'm then got like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff on that Stimulus is working on, because presumably you need to tell it the controller, but then also you need to tell it all of the I can't remember what it called it earlier, but the actual the other bits and bobs that it needs. Then you've got all the Tailwind stuff, which is if that's complex behavior, so it has all of like the different viewports doing different stuff. Yeah, there's a lot in there. I'd be interested to see apps that really have leaned into this and what their partials look like, just out of sheer curiosity. So I don't know, actually don't know off the top of my head who's using those two together, but I might ask about that on Twitter. It'd be interesting to see any open source stuff that uses that. Okay, cool. Sorry, that was a total aside just while I was like, oh, we're about to add a bunch of stuff to HTML. Identifiers serve as the link between elements and controllers. In this case, the identifier hello tells Stimulus to create an instance of the controller class in hello controller.js. You can learn more about how automatic controller loading works in the installation guide. Reload the page in your browser and you'll see that nothing has changed. How do we know whether our controller is working or not? One way is to put a log statement in the connect method, which Stimulus calls each time a controller is connected to the document. Okay, so connect is the method that I have a memory of reading about before. So implement the connect method in hello controller.js as follows. Is that the same? Is that what we had in our channels thing as well? Yeah, that has a connect method. And what about the JavaScript? Oh, it's channels, isn't it? No, that's... Did we not have a corresponding JS file for those action cable things? Can't remember. I generally can't remember. That was only a few weeks ago. I had thought we'd had one on the... Oh no, it was one here, and then there was a corresponding thing where you actually had the model called web notification. Is that right? Or that just created the channel? Okay, I can't quite remember, but okay, fine. So I'm just connect is the one. Okay, reload the page again and open the developer console. You should see hello Stimulus followed by a representation of our div. Okay, great. So that's how you connect them. Cool. Actions. I'm skipping over that stuff, but if you're in like everything is there if you want to go play with it. Like they give you this glitch thing and you can just follow the docs. Now let's see how to change the code so our log message appears when we click the greet button. Instead, start by renaming connect to greet. Okay, so we no longer want to do anything upon the connection. We want to call the greet method when the button's click event is triggered. In Stimulus, controller methods which handle events are called action methods. I wonder how far that metaphor of it being a controller with actions stretches. Because in my mind, obviously, with a controller and actions, I'm usually thinking of create, show, and actions I would normally use in Rails. So is the idea that you would have a standard set in Stimulus, or is it just everyone goes rogue and has whatever they need? I'm guessing by the fact that this one's called greet, probably not a standard set. We want to call the greet method when the button's click event is triggered in Stimulus controller method, which, sorry, I read that bit, to connect our action methods to the button's click event and add a data action attribute to the button. Yes, this is what I mean. So you've got data controller here, then data action here. Obviously, you're just going to build up more and more of those because you can have, as I understand it, you can have multiple controllers acting on the same like sets of divs depending on the behavior you're trying to get working. So data action value click hello greet is called an action descriptor. This particular descriptor says click is the event name, hello is the controller identifier, and greet is the name of the method to invoke. So this kind of syntax here will be familiar if you're used to kind of like the controller action syntax, I guess, in Rails, where this is the controller name and then this is the action. So you would see that maybe in your logs, or anywhere where you're trying to indicate, hey, it's this controller, this action. And then this part here, I think is a bit of Stimulus specific stuff where click is the event name. So I'm assuming we just handle all default event handlers from the browser. So I'm assuming that. Load the page in your browser and open the develop. You should see the log message when you click when you appear the greet button. Again, I'm not going to do that because it's fine. We assume that works. Target map important elements to controller properties. We'll finish the exercise by changing our action to say hello to whatever name we've typed in the text field. In order to do that, first we need a reference to the input element inside our controller. Then we can read the value property to get its contents. Stimulus lets us mark important elements as targets, so we can easily reference them in the controller through corresponding properties. Add a data hello target attribute to the input element. Right, okay, so hello target tells Stimulus that it is a target for this specific controller. So presumably if we did have multiple controllers interacting with the same code, we would have data dash some other controller dash target if we needed to. And I'm assuming that is how we keep some sort of independence between them. And the state of each, the state is always just what the HTML is. So that is there state in the controller at all? Because if you did have multiple controllers acting on the same DOM, but you needed one to not change until something happened, something else. Okay. I'm not quite sure how we handle that, but I don't have a complex use case at the moment, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so next we'll create a property for the target by adding name to our controller's list of target definitions. I've read all this before, and it's just getting to stick in my brain. Stimulus will automatically create a this.name target property, which returns the first matching target element. We can use this property to read the element's value and build our greeting string. Adding name to our controller's list of target definitions. Okay, so the controller needs to be told explicitly That's interesting. Why does it need to be told explicitly if you've already got the data attribute? If when this is instantiated, could it not go through and find everything with data hello target? And you set them, its stimulus will automatically create a this.name target property. That's interesting. Oh, is that like is it a security? Oh no, it's not just JavaScript. So that's interesting. So the fact that we have to tell the controller explicitly to go and find this, or that it has this available as a target when it's already on the DOM. But it must be about setting it on this, perhaps. I don't know enough about JavaScript to know if there's some sort of JavaScript issue that would make that tricky to do for at the point when it's instantiated. Maybe it's like the order that it happens, or something, or when it happens in the DOM rendering. Okay, so I'm hoping that made some sense. It made some sense to me. I think we just have to tell it what data it's going to go grab. We've seen that stimulus controllers are instances of JavaScript classes whose methods can act as event handlers. Great. That means we have an arsenal of standard refactoring techniques at our disposal. For example, we can clean up our greet method by extracting a name getter. Okay, cool, but I don't know enough about this, but if I've defined name as a target, so I know that there is a corresponding value available, could we not just infer that there was always a getter? Or a target's like you can make them anything. So am I being too simplistic about that? Like presumably they're not always input fields, they could be anything. Could that just be an element coming back? Okay, I don't know the answer to that, but that's interesting. Okay, so all name is doing there is returning the code you were already getting, which is this.name target, you've defined the target there and on the DOM element, and then it gets the value. So it's just cleaning that up. Okay, cool. Congratulations, you've just written your first stimulus controller, or read it. We've covered the framework's most important concepts, controllers, actions, and targets. In the next chapter, we'll see how to put these together in a real-life controller taken right from Basecamp. This is where I got confused on the Turbo Streams one, because the example was right from Basecamp, and it was the I can't remember what it was, like the policy holder allow list behavior, and all of the words were so confusing. It was like it was allowing people to email you in that email thing. It was like a can this person email, and it was like an applicant and a approver or something. I can't remember what the words were. I got really confused as to what the hell the behavior actually was trying to replicate. Building something real. Yes, this is what we're looking at. Great. So we've implemented our first controller and learned how Stimulus connects HTML to JavaScript. Now let's take a look at something we can use in a real application by recreating a controller from Basecamp. Scatter throughout Basecamp's UI buttons like these. Cool little copy to clipboard things. When you click on one of these buttons, Basecamp copies a bit of text such as a URL or an email address to your clipboard. The web platform has an API for accessing the system clipboard, but there's no HTML element that does what we need. That's a good point. It'd be cool if there was an HTML element that, like, just built that in, because then everyone would know to look for the same symbol. Although all of the HTML elements will always look different on every browser anyway, so that's a pie in the sky idea. To implement a copy to clipboard button, we must use JavaScript. Implementing a copy button. Okay, so that just adds input and a button. I'm skipping along pretty quick. Setting up the controller. Clipboard controller. So that's a method called copy. To control the clipboard to the outer div. So we're adding the controller to the outer div around the behavior that we want to create. I wonder, like, is there any penalty for where that lives up? Does that need to be, could you have multiple? Oh, I can't word my question, but like, presumably there's a reason why you would want to wrap that quite closely to the behavior. Can you have multiple controllers on a page? It said yes, because each one created a new instance of the, class. So presumably if we have a copy, well, we can find them. Well, we can try that out. So data clipboard target source type text, so value 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we add this on the page twice, presumably it's going to have two different instances of the class. How does it know which one to point to? Does Stimulus just handle that? We can test that out actually. That'll be a quick one to test. Sorry, that was my mind totally raced ahead there. So we'll need a reference to the text field. So we can add data clipboard target source to the text field, and then obviously we presumably need to tell the clipboard controller about that target as well, which we do down here. So type text value 1, 2, 3, 4. It's read only. Now add a target definition to the controller so we can access the text field element. This source target. That's, yep. What's with that static targets line? That's what I said earlier. When Stimulus loads your controller class, it looks for target name strings in a static array called targets. Yeah, my question was, why isn't it grabbing them? Why can't it grab them from the DOM? For each target name in the array, Stimulus adds 3 new properties to your controller. Here, our source target name becomes the following properties. This .source target evaluates the first source target in your controller's scope. If there is no source target, accessing the property throws an error. Oh, okay. Okay, so it explicitly is saying if there isn't one there, it's broken. Okay. This .source targets evaluates to an array of all source targets in the controller scope. Okay, this is answering my questions. And this .has source target evaluates to true if there is a source target or false if not. Okay, so you can check has source target before trying to call source target so you don't get the error thrown, and you can behave accordingly. Right, okay. This is pretty good document. This is better than the Turbo Streams documentation, personally for me. Connecting the action. Okay, so that all made sense to me. That added some context there. So basically, it's deliberate that it's asking you to define them manually. Although, couldn't you do... Can you go and get everything that has a target, has the attribute, and turn and create the targets array anyway? No idea. Now we're ready to hook up the copy button. We want to click on the button to invoke the copy method in our controller. So we add data action clipboard copy. Does that not need the click thing? You might have noticed we've omitted click from the action descriptor. That's because Stimulus defines click as the default for actions on button elements. Certain other elements have default events too. Here's the full list. That's very Railsy to just have an API that is inconsistent if you know the defaults off the top of your head and otherwise consistent. Yeah, okay, cool. Because these are things that you would assume you would want to click most of the time. So if you wanted to do like a hover thing on a link, you would need to do hover arrow, link hover hash show or something like that. Whereas if you're doing a click, you could just put okay, so button form click, select change and text area input. Okay. Finally, in our copy method, we can select the input field's contents and call the clipboard API. It's lovely to live in a world where we no longer have 4 paragraphs about IE compatibility, because I remember doing some of this stuff a while ago on an app that supported JavaScript behavior in IE, and there was like 30 more lines of JavaScript just to try and get some sort of equivalent of this running. Load the page in your browser. Cool. Stimulus controllers are reusable. So far, we've seen what happens when there's one instance of a controller on the page at a time. It's not unusual to have multiple instances of a controller on the page simultaneously. They're reading my mind with these docs. For example, we might want to display a list of pins, each with its own copy button. Our controller is reusable. Anytime we want to provide a way to copy a bit of text to the clipboard, all we need is markup on the page with the right annotations. Let's go ahead and add another pin to the page. Copy and paste the divs. There are 2 identical pin fields, and change the value attribute of the second. Reload the page and confirm that both buttons work. Okay, great. So you do want that data controller as tightly around that behavior as possible, so you can reuse it, rather than you could put that div potentially like the top of the page, I would guess, but you could then only use one. And I think it's because that I'm assuming it's because that idea of the data controller instantiating the instance of the class, I'm assuming. Actions and targets can go on any kind of element. Now let's add one more pin field. This time we'll use a copy link instead of a button. Okay. So it's the same thing, but just with a link. Okay. Stimulus lets us use any kind of element we want as long as it has an appropriate data action attribute. Note that in this case, clicking the link will also cause the browser to fire the link's href. We can cancel this default behavior by calling event.preventDefault in the action. Similarly, our source target need not be an input type text. The controller only expects it to have a value property and a select method. That means we can use a text area instead. Can you call select on like a div? I actually have no idea. Can you get the browser to select a bit of text, static text? Don't think I've ever tried that. In this chapter, we looked at a real-life example, wrapping a browser API in a Stimulus controller. We saw how multiple instances of the controller can appear. Yep. Now let's see how small changes to the controllers are. I'm going to keep going with these docs because I know that we're not writing any code, but I'm finding this super helpful, so I'm just going to keep going. Designing for resilience. Oh, okay. Okay, we are going to spend time doing IE and things with the sound of it. Although the clipboard API is well supported in current browsers, we might still expect to have a small number of people with older browsers using our application. We should also expect people to have problems accessing our application from time to time. When JavaScript can't load, fine. It's tempting to write off support for older browsers as not worth the effort. I don't think this is not worth the effort, but there would certainly approaching a world with IE where the numbers are getting a lot smaller, surely. He's saying that I only work on apps where they are supported, I think. So, or to dismiss network issues as temporary glitches that resolve themselves after a refresh. But often it's trivially easy to build features in a way that's gratefully resilient to these types of problems. I don't know if I've ever known anyone to dismiss network issues. I say that I think I'm assuming that a lot of people who read this do. This resilient approach, commonly known as progressive enhancement, is the practice of delivering. Yep. Progressively enhancing the Pinfield. Let's look at how we can progressively enhance our Pinfield so that the copy button is invisible unless. Oh, okay, right. Unless it's supported by the browser. That way, we can avoid someone showing a button that doesn't work. We'll start by hiding the copy button in CSS. Then we'll feature test support for the clipboard API in our stimulus controller. If the API is supported, we'll add a class name to the controller element to reveal a button. Start by adding class clipboard button to the button element. So that only hides it. Yep, display none. Then add the following styles. Clipboard -- supported. Okay. That then shows it basically. So it's hidden here if it's not supported by default. And then we're going to add these if it is supported. Now add a connect method to the controller, which will add a class name to the controller's element when the API is supported. Great. Okay. And that is on the connect method. So that is when the instance of the controller connects, quote unquote, to the DOM, to the document. You can place this method anywhere in the controller's class body. If you wish, disable JavaScript in your browser, reload the page and notice the copy button is no longer visible. Great. Okay, that's cool. Oh, what feature we're adding today? We're going to do something with Stimulus. I haven't decided what yet. Morning, Justin, by the way. This is Justin asking on the chat, what feature are we adding? We're diving into Stimulus, and I think we could do something. It depends how... I was actually thinking about like a drop down on... I'm going to carry on with these docs for now, but let's see what we can implement after these, because I'm interested in the managing state part. Let's keep going. Let's keep going for now. So most contemporary frameworks encourage you to keep state in JavaScript at all times. They treat the DOM as a write-only rendering target reconciled by client-side templates consuming JSON from the server. So that is the world in which I am like most familiar. So React is probably the one that I have used the most. I've never used Vue, and I've used React in a couple different ways, either where the initial state is in the DOM, we then load that into React, and then it goes off and does everything else it needs from there, or where the state comes from an initial network call. So basically the DOM just loads up a React component and then goes off, gets everything it needs, and then comes back. I haven't ever worked with one of those giant state managements where the whole application is in one state, like in, I think, Redux and other things do that. It's been more the idea of a component on a page rather than the entire app being in a component, but I think the principle is basically the same. So I'm familiar with what this is describing, this first paragraph. So Stimulus takes a different approach. Stimulus application state lives as attributes in the DOM. Controls themselves are largely stateless. This approach makes it possible to work with HTML from anywhere. The initial document and AJAX requires a turbo visit or even another JavaScript library, and have associated controllers spring to life automatically without any explicit initialization step. So I think that the reason I'm interested in this one is my question earlier about having multiple controllers over the same DOM. So if you're, I'm trying to think of an example where this would happen. So let's say that you're waiting for a request to come back, but it's a slow network request. So you've said, hey, go and get me some more data and I want to change the DOM somehow. But then the user clicks on something or does some interaction that changes this DOM, when I suppose I suppose it's up to you, because if you're considering the DOM the state, do you like disable the button that the user can click while the state is waiting to come back? You kind of like prevent that change. I mean, you still have to deal with that in React anyway, but yeah. But in the maybe I don't know. I'm imagining a scenario that I haven't got an example for. So in the last chapter, we learned how a stimulus controller can maintain simple state in the document by adding a class name to an element. What do we do when we need to store a value, not just a simple flag? We'll investigate this question by building a slideshow controller, which keeps its currently selected slide index in an attribute. So I've definitely looked at this example before. So it's the same kind of deal that we had before. We've got all our targets and actions set up. Each slide target represents a single slide in the slideshow. Our controller will be responsible for making sure that only one slide is visible. Let's draft our controller, create a new file. Okay, so we've got one target, which is slide. So we've got an initialize, which presumably is there to just set the value of these. And that's not done on connect. Okay, fair enough. So, but it does create some sort of state because we have indexes now stored here. When we hit the next method, we increment that index. Oh, okay. So is the idea that we increment it and then show current slide immediately puts it on the DOM. Previous then decrements the index. Show current slide. Okay. This slide targets for each. Loop over the slide targets. And I think that comes from targets. In the previous page, we were looking at you get slide target, slide targets, and has slide target, I think was the other one. So this is a collection of targets, these within this controller, within that instance of that controller. So that would be these four, which is where that's where this has come from. So for each of those, loop over them. And whether they're hidden or not. Okay, so we're hiding them if they're the one, but we don't actually update don't store the index anywhere. Our controller defines a method show current slide, which loops over each slide target, toggling the hidden attribute if its index matches. We initialize the controller by showing the first slide, and the next and previous methods advance and rewrite the current slide. So what does the initialize method do, and how is it different from the connect method we used before? Okay, these docs are pretty good at answering my questions. These are stimulus lifestyle. I've read these before. I've 100% read these before, probably more than once, I think. But just my memory is awful. These are stimulus lifestyle callback methods, and they're useful for setting up or tearing down associated state when your controller enters or leaves the document. Initialize is once when the controller is first instantiated. Connect is anytime the controller is connected to the DOM. And disconnect is anytime the controller is disconnected from the DOM. So that's interesting. Do you get a connect? What would cause you to get another connect other than your initial render? I get that they're different, but what triggers the multiple connects for a single instance of a controller? Reading initial state from the DOM. Notice how our controller tracks its state. The currently selected slide in this index property. Now, say we'd like to start one of our slideshows with the second slide visible instead of the first. How can we encode the start index in our markup? One way might be to load the initial index with an HTML data attribute. For example, we could add a data index attribute to the controller's element. Okay. Then in our initialize method, we could read that attribute, convert it to an integer, and pass it to show current slide. Yep, that makes sense. This might get the job done, but it's clunky, requires us to make a decision about what to name the attribute, and doesn't help us if we want to initialize only once and connect is when stimulus is activated. So do you get that multiple? Sorry, I'm just responding in the chat. Justin's put initialize is only once and connect is when the stimulus is activated. But do you then activate that more than once? Like, do you get connect more than once? So using values. Okay, so stimulus controllers support typed value properties which automatically map to data attributes. Stimulus controllers support typed value properties which automatically map to data attributes. Okay, when we added value definition to the top of our controller class, stimulus will create a this.indexValue controller property associated with a data slideshow index value attribute and handle a numeric conversion for us. Let's see that in action. Add the associated data attribute to our HTML. Okay, so we've got targets and values as definitions that we make on the controller that we then look to the DOM for. So this is basically a way of storing state on the DOM. Then add a static values definition to the controller and change the initialize method to log this.index value. And presumably we get some, oh, well, I don't know about presumably, but when we did targets, we got a few other helper methods. I wonder if you get other stuff there or do you just get the value back? So this.index value. So naming is going to be really key here. So you can end up with multiple values of different types. I wonder if you use this with TypeScript, do you get the typing for free? Ooh. Brain can't hold that. Okay. Index value. Okay, yep. So that tells it it's a number. So there you know. And if this isn't set, what do you get back? An error? Similar to targets, you define values in a stimulus controller by describing a null. You define values in a stimulus controller by describing them in a static object property called values. In this case, we've defined a single numeric value called index. You can read more about value definitions in the reference documentation. So when we defined the target, we didn't have to have one. So I'm just going to read Justin's comment because it's super helpful. You can connect, disconnect, or have multiple connects to a single controller. The initializer only runs. So you can connect and disconnect, or have multiple connects to a single controller. Oh, okay. I wonder if that's I'm just being really dense, but is that a use case that you trigger, or is it like, is there a reason you would want to connect and disconnect? I think I'm probably thinking of it like really, like it's once the elements are in the DOM, their connect has run, so they're connected. Like, if we remove them from the DOM, presumably when we come back, we just get a different instance of the controller with a different connect because it's a whole new DOM element. Is there a reason we would want to connect and disconnect? I don't know I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know if that's important. Cool. Okay. So I'm gonna keep going this one. So we have this index here, and I'd be interested to know what happens if we don't set this. So here's how the controller should look instead. Right. Okay. So like presumably you would just always use values and never use, or not never, but like the default should be to use the state in the DOM and actively try and not create state in the controller. Reload the page and use the web inspector to confirm change callbacks. A revised controller improves on the original version, but the repeated calls to this.show current slide stand out. You have to manually update the state of the document when the controller initializes and after every place where we update this.index value. We can define a stimulus value change callback to clean up the repetition and specify how the controller should respond whenever the index value changes. Okay. There's a lot to think about with these little controllers like this. So you have you have a specific API for managing status values, and there's a callback API for every time those are changed. I think I'm just trying to compare that to React Land, where you would, yeah, okay, like have your state and then do your re-render when you're done or whatever. Sorry, I'm mumbling to myself. Great. Okay, so let's see how these callbacks work. So index value changed. So when it says we can define a stimulus value change callback, is there a wider API or do we just get changed at the end? So index value changed. And then as soon as that changes, this will presumably get triggered. First, remove the initialize method and define a new method, index value changed. Then remove the calls to this.show current slide from next and previous. Okay, cool. Stimulus calls the index value change method at initialization, and in response to any change to the data slideshow index value attribute, you can even fiddle with the attribute in the web inspector, and the controller will change slides in the response. Go ahead and try it out. Great, okay. In this chapter, we've seen, this is taking me back to Justin's original question, which is what feature are we adding today? I think I hadn't quite clocked how far you could take stimulus, maybe. Okay. In this chapter, we've seen how to use values and load and persist with the current index of a slideshow controller. From a usability perspective, our controller is incomplete. The previous button appears to do nothing when you're looking at the first slide. Internally, index.value decrements from 0 to -1. Could we make the value wrap around to the last slide index instead? Next, we'll look at how to keep track of external resources such as timers and HTTP requests. Oh, okay. So I'm interested in the HTTP requests one. So this is something that we were looking at earlier. So this is where I think I'm interested in where this bumps into turbo streams and turbo frames. So I'm assuming that there are a bunch of people who are just using stimulus because I think it was around before. Well, it wasn't around before turbo links, but I'm now aware that they're all kind of like becoming a set of tools that kind of know together. But there's no reason that you have to be using turbo frames or turbo streams. But presumably you would look to, if you are using them, you would look to use them by default to maybe asynchronously load HTML because you could just, get all that stuff out of the box. Whereas you can use this. Stimulus, I mean. External, okay, yep. So asynchronously loading HTML. Oh, okay, actually it has an API for it. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, sorry, I might have been talking at my ass for the, that last part. Maybe this goes hand in hand. So data content loader URL value. So it has a built-in way to swap HTML. We use this technique in Basecamp to keep our initial page loads fast and keep our views free of user-specific content so they can be cached more effectively. We'll build a general purpose content loader controller which populates its element with HTML fetched from the server. We'll use it to load a list of unread messages you'd like to see in email inbox. Right, okay, but this behavior is presumably mimicking you can do the same thing in turbo frames, which is lazy load the frame. So I'm assuming that they're just built on top of each other. So it's And with turbo frames, you don't need to bother having your own controller to go and do this. Right, okay, so I'm assuming that lazy loaded turbo frames are essentially just doing this stimulus behavior, which is just like, wait for this thing to load. As soon as it connects, go and get the URL, populate it. I've made a bunch of assumptions there, but that would really line up and make a lot of sense. In a real application, you generate this HTML dynamically on the server, but for demonstration purposes, we'll just use a static file. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, great. Okay, this is making so much more sense to me now. Okay, when the controller connects, we kick off a fetch request to the URL specified in the elements data content load URL value. Yeah, so it's not a special API. That's literally just the name of the that's the name of the controller. That's the name of the value, and that's just telling it that it is a value. Yeah. God, these must get really long sometimes. Great. Okay, refreshing automatically with a timer. Let's improve our controller by changing it to periodically refresh the inbox so it's always up to date. Yeah, because timers in React is always a pain in the bum. If you've got, especially anything where you're taking the components away and bringing them back and stuff, like the new hook stuff, like yeah, I have done stuff with it, but my memory is not amazing. But it'd be great if this like simplifies it, because you then don't need to. Is it like a cleanup API? So then if this is pulled from the DOM, it goes and like removes the timer from running and things like that. Because I think that's what we had to handle in React, where you maybe create a timer to do something, but you can't trust that your component is going to be around the whole time. So as it unmounts itself or whatever their API is, you have to go and clean up after itself. Add a static value as definition in the controller to define a new method, start refreshing. Then update the connect method. Is there a disconnect method? To call start refreshing. Reload the page. I think Justin said connect/disconnect earlier. Okay, releasing tracked resources. Here we go. So we start a timer when the controller connects, but we never stop it. We can issue this by modifying our start refreshing method to keep a reference to the timer. We can then add a corresponding stop refreshing method below to cancel the timer. Okay, that's a disconnect. Okay, so that's a good reason why we would want to keep that. Right, okay, so where we can store stuff on the actual instance itself is a good place, is where we need to tidy that stuff up later. Okay, that makes a bunch of sense. Now we can be sure a content loader controller will only issue requests when it's connected to the DOM. Let's take a look at our final controller class. Okay, I skipped over that pretty quickly. So basically, the first example looked at the lazy loading behavior. And this is polling behavior, I guess. So once every n seconds, go and get a URL and what does it do with it? Yeah, just go and get a URL and replace the content of this div with whatever comes back. So here, when we connect, called load, fair enough, which loads the page. If we have a refresh interval value, then we start refreshing, and the value is right. So this is an example of that internal stimulus API we looked at earlier. So we know that we have a value called refresh interval, and therefore we get a has refresh interval value method for free as part of that. So that looks to see if this is set on the DOM. And if it is, then we do when we call start refreshing, which creates the timer and uses that value. So that's refresh interval value has been set, and it just calls load every time it runs a timer. Great, that all works fine. And then, like we said, we want to say when a disconnect method. So disconnect is guessing when it gets pulled from the DOM. Okay, and we don't need to worry about installing Stimulus because we've already got that. So I am interested in going to read, when does disconnect, connection, disconnection, a connected controller will later become disconnected when either of the preceding conditions becomes false, such as under any of the following scenarios. Oh, I didn't read what the, I didn't read what the preceding scenarios were. So connection, a controller is connected to the document when both of the following conditions are true. Its element is present in the document. Its identifier is present in the element's data controller attribute. When a controller becomes connected, stimulus calls connect. Okay, so when it's in the DOM, it's connected. Great. A connected controller will later become disconnected when either of the preceding conditions become false, such as under any of the following scenarios. The element is explicitly removed from the document with node remove child or child node remove. So that could be us in a turbo frame, like clicking delete or something like that. Or even just clicking edit would pull it. Right, okay, so clicking edit would pull it because it would no longer be in the DOM because the DOM would switch that out. But then clicking cancel would reconnect it because it would put it, but it's not reconnecting. It's just connecting a new instance, I'm assuming. So you would get disconnect. Okay, fine. One of the element's parent elements is removed from the document. Okay. One of the element's parent elements says its contents replaced by inner HTML. The element's data controller attribute is removed or modified. The document installs a new body element, such as during a turbo page change. A disconnected controller may become connected again at a later time. When this happens, such as after removing the controller's element from the document and then reattaching it, Stimulus will reuse the element's previous controller instance, calling its connect method multiple times. Right, that's what I was trying to get to. So when is it going to reconnect? When this happens, such as after removing the controller's element from the document and then reattaching it. So when it says reattaching it, if I click, so let's take a look at our behavior for this. So this is just Stimulus stuff today. Okay, so let's go and take a look at what? Oh, okay. Is this where we have to go and sometimes the Postgres app doesn't close properly. Sorry about this. Just remind me later. Just going to pull this onto the screen in case there's anything in there. Start. No, okay, so I'll pull it back because you get this error. The data directory contains a postmasters.pid file, which usually means that the server is already running. So that's a very long error message, which is really helpful, and I'm appreciative of it, but this has happened before. And I had to go and Google Postgres postmaster.pid. And then I had to just Google where to go and remove it from. Sorry, this is just a total interruption. Damn it. That's me pasting my thing from earlier. That's a description. This is totally not copying. Oh, is it that stupid? Oh my God, Medium is so annoying. What the hell? Create an account to highlight this passage. Oh my God. How did that site get so bad all the time? Okay, I'm just going to pull this onto my other screen temporarily because I have to go spelunking around in my file. I think maybe that's not the path I used. Yeah, I don't think it was the same. Yeah, I think it depends on where you've installed. Sorry, bear with me. Sorry, I'm just going to jump onto the other screen really quickly. Got a little mini Postgres detour this morning. Not 100% sure what triggers this. It's like something to do with macOS just not closing itself down probably, but I didn't have an error. The last time I restarted, it was just normal. I just triggered a manual restart. So Postgres, sorry, I'm just looking for where this app lives. Postgres app, there it is. And then it's in. Oh God, this might suddenly not become worth. Application support Postgres. That's the 12. This must not be here. Then what do you have to do? Remove it? Should you just delete it? Yeah, you just delete it. Okay. Okay, let's give that another try. Amazing. Great. Sorry about that. Hopefully mildly. Cool. Then we can go back to our local host. Great. Here is our, yeah, I totally didn't get a chance to. And we were looking at, oh, damn it. It's asking me to sign in again. Okay. To go through this each time. Okay, so we can grab this, pop that in there. Oops, no, we don't want this part. Great, your account has been created, and then we should be able to go to here, and then I can't remember which one. Oh, we were able to just run a sync, weren't we, last time? See, sorry, this is all just prep just to get our UI back up and running. And so we then have our job that we run. View.perform. It'll just be the last one we made, hopefully. And as usual, I haven't got my. In fact, I'm going to keep going with this because so Google. The reason I'm laughing, if you haven't seen the stream before, is that I always reset the YouTube API key because I still haven't bothered to pop it in properly from about 15,000 streams ago. So I'm just gonna go and grab a new key and copy it on the other screen. Copy that, excellent. And then we're gonna jump over to YTGem, paste it out, and then we can exit that, enter it again. Cool. Okay, so we get a lovely one there, and then in here it's channels, and I don't know what the ID is. Channel.last.id is 22. So we've got a user that can access this channel. Okay, great. So what we have, if we were to, so this turbo frame wraps the entire thing. So if we had stimulus behavior happening within this description, so for example, if we put our copy button in here, it would be, and it copied this description. Great. Okay. If we then hit edit, that description is gone and is no longer in the DOM. Okay. So we've presumably received our disconnect and just moved on. If we hit cancel, am I reconnecting this, or am I reconnecting this element? Oops, this element here, or am I getting a new connect, or does it not matter? That was a fucking long way around to get to that question, but that was where I got a bit confused on the what does reattaching mean? Okay. Stimulus watches the page for asynchronous changes asynchronous using the DOM mutation observer API. This means that Stimulus calls your controller's lifecycle methods asynchronously after changes are made to the document in the next micro task following each change. Lifecycle methods will still run in the order they occur, so two calls to a controller's connect method will always be separated by one call to disconnect. Okay. Yeah, I'm a bit lost on whether you would get oh sorry, there's more Twitch spam in the chat today. Oh no, it's gonna go crazy. And I don't know how to turn that off, as we've discovered in other streams, which is super frustrating. Okay, so just going to see if I can quickly delete those. Apologies for the spam on the screen. Just logging into Twitch on the other browser really quickly. Okay, so can I delete these users in chat? On view, okay, cool. Oh my God, I really need to learn how to use Twitch. It's not something that I do very much. Oh, okay, so I now got that open, but it won't show me the previous. And those users have gone. Okay, that should be the end of it. I'm gonna have to learn how to use that button. Okay, thank you for reporting it. It's very annoying. Okay, great. So yeah, I can see the moderator view, but the messages aren't there. So I think you maybe have to have that open, whereas I just leave the Streamlabs OBS chat view open. So maybe I have to leave this one open all the time afterwards. I've gone there, but they're not there, so it doesn't seem to have a log. Okay, annoying. So let's let's kind of plan. Well, let's do some planning in that case. Let's use Stimulus. So we're running kind of out of time for this morning because we've gone long. But this has been like I feel like we got a lot of power now. Like we should really do something stimulusy that doesn't fall under the behavior of turbo streams or turbo frames. So the last time we did our image behavior, we've got all that stuff working with active storage. I think, yeah, everything at the moment is fairly simple, but it would be good to find a behavior for stimulus that was non-standard. So what were the examples they had in the handbook? They had some stuff in here. They had some examples. Print a greeting, copy text, navigate. Okay, these are just the examples in here. I feel like we should have... Oh, really? They were sent to me directly. Oh, okay. That's super interesting. Oh, thank you very much. I don't know how to prevent people doing that in the channel. Oh, that's great. Okay, but they still end up on the screen. That must be a Streamlabs thing. Oh, thank you so much. I'll look into preventing those from getting shown on the stream if they were sent to me directly. Okay. I'll take a look into that. I'll learn a bit more about Twitch because we don't want spam stuff. Okay, so... I think the next thing is to build something stimulus specific and kind of stretch our awareness and what we've just learned about it. I don't know if anyone has any. There is a stimulus like Stimulus.js, I think that stimulus use. A collection of I've got this new dimmed GitHub thing on, so I'm hoping this is legible. Stimulus is a collection of composable behaviors for your stimulus controllers. So I've seen this on Twitter, but I haven't looked into it at all. So what I'm assuming this is that a bunch of people need similar behavior loads. So why make them build the same controllers over and over again? Let's just build a set of reusable ones and open source them. Fair enough. I'm assuming that's what this is. This set of mixin is built around the observer APIs and custom events to enhance your controllers with new behaviors. Use click outside, use hover, use idle, use intersection, use mutation, use resize, use target mutation, use visibility, use window resize. Okay, cool. Use debounce, use memo, use throttle. Okay, these all look really helpful. Yeah, these look really helpful. Okay, so we can, that's not quite what I was like. Can I star that? Okay, star that. Okay, so I was thinking more like, stimulus. I'm just going to go around for use cases. Let's see if we can see what other people have done or if anyone else has any other ideas, really. Well, I suppose we should think about it from the actual application. So we could have... I tell you what would be really interesting is the... if we could do stuff with that WYSIWYG controller, the tricks editor for editing these. So when you're editing video descriptions in YouTube, they're basically just text, action text. Is that what it's called? Is that the same thing as tricks? So we could get that up and running, and then we could do something with Stimulus to, like maybe it fires an event or something like that. And the example of the docs is a copy to clipboard button. Yeah, so I'm hoping we can go. Hello, Chris, by the way, on the YouTube chat. So I'm thinking we can go. Okay, I'm going to copy that out. Action text overview. Let me did this before, so let's try and copy that out. Okay, yeah, so it's action text is, I think, the wrapper around tricks. Okay. Oh, I tell you what could be really, I know we're just having a brainstorming session now, but so this paragraph is really interesting. So most WYSIWYG editors are wrappers around HTML's content editable and exec command. Trick sidesteps these inconsistencies by treating content editable as an IO device. When input makes its way to the editor, Tricks converts that input into an editing operation on its internal document model, then re-renders it. So I have in the past tried to avoid using these kind of WYSIWYG editors, and kind of fallen back to that kind of block editor idea, where you end up with more composable, rather than saying, hey, you can do whatever you want in this container. You say, well, there is no one container. We're going to give you multiple blocks, kind of more around the idea of what I think Gutenberg has sort of become a little bit. There are some really good examples. No, not good examples. There are some examples. I had like a name. It was like Meet Alfred or something, like Meet Bob. Block editor JavaScript. So editor.js, I don't remember that one. Is this the type of and they never take you straight to the demo. Cheeky. Oh, okay, so this is the kind of okay, here and then plus. All right, so this is Notion basically. If you've ever used the Notion app, I've built something like this before, but we made it more explicitly in the version that I built that it was different blocks. This is using more the Notion idea, where you're basically editing one single page, but rather than having a page and saying you can type whatever you want, you can select large blocks and do anything you want. You treat each individual section as a block, and each block has a type. So it might be an image type or a text type or header or anything like that. And you're explicitly a block editor rather than a WYSIWYG. So that feels like something that you would do in Stimulus. I did mine in React. So that could be a use case, although it was a complete pain in the bum, frankly. The one that so yeah, there's Gutenberg. Bricky, I can't remember the one that I actually based my design on. So that is something we could do. Okay, so I'm interested in getting action text up and running, but I don't remember that being difficult. I used the Tricks gem before it was called action text. Oh, that's interesting. I don't remember there being a... Oh, that's cool. So you can actually put that straight onto the model. Okay, that's interesting. So I am interested in doing that. But then how can we do some Stimulus-y stuff around it? Maybe with buttons along the bottom that do something custom to that behavior. Or, maybe it is something simple. Like Chris said, that the example one is just a copy to clipboard, but we make it I don't know, we make it a different version. We modify the text as we go through. I want to learn. I want to use what we've just learned about Stimulus. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave things today. We're going to kind of dived into the Stimulus docs, have a good understanding of it, and where it fits. Let's kind of move this off of the editor. So we've taken a look at Stimulus, where it fits alongside turbo frames and turbo streams. And we didn't follow along necessarily with the code examples, but we got to grips with the full API. Let's see if we can use action text next week, get that up and running for editing the descriptions for the videos, because that would be cool. Now that we've got active storage in there, presumably we can pull doc images in there and have them like get uploaded automatically and things like that. That would be cool. And then the third thing that would be cool to tackle would be how can we get Stimulus doing stuff with that. And I don't know what the stuff is. We'll have to figure that out later. Or when we did active storage last week, there was a couple of examples of where you could build your own JavaScript behavior, and they had some examples for like drop zone and things like that. We could do that in Stimulus maybe, although presumably you don't need to. You can just do that. Anyway, I'm going to think that through before next week. And we just learned a whole bunch of Stimulus stuff. So hopefully that's useful for people that have been interested in Stimulus. I know it's something that's been on my radar, especially alongside all the turbo things. I will, again, attempt to try and do the design stuff and UI stuff during the week. I don't know if I'm going to get time for that because I'm trying to move house. Thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in this morning. I hope, and for everyone that watches during the week, hello during the week. And we will see you all, if you can join us live or at another time next week. Have lovely weeks, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next Sunday.